if I judiciously control my intake of cannabis, it like gives me a second wind and a third wind to go forward with creative activity. Now, if you just sit down and smoke into stupor, you're not going to be able to do this. But if you just stop this now tiresome and boring activity and have a couple of puffs, and then you sit and you have a few interesting thoughts, and you feel completely revitalized and able to go back to it. And I've noticed this not only with creative work, but with physical work. For instance, if I'm stacking wood, I'll stack half a cord of wood, and then I'll either think, well, I'll finish stacking it tomorrow, and then I'll go in and smoke some cannabis. And a half hour later I'll say, well, why wait till tomorrow? I'll just go and finish it right now. I think you all know Paul Bowles' book, or the statement that a puff of keef makes a man strong as 20 camels in the courtyard. There's something to this. It's not simple. It can turn you into a stupor, sort of lazy, loutish person. On the other hand, it can allow you to do very hard work for very long periods of time. So you sort of have to manage it. And I think a lot of people don't learn to manage it. One of the things that's always put against marijuana is that it destroys short-term, or it destroys your memory. Well, I dare say I have a prodigious memory, and I'm the heaviest smoker I've ever known, and my memory for dates, names of painters, writers, literary and scientific minutiae, odd vocabularies in specialized areas is very great. And I don't credit cannabis with that, but I certainly can't believe that it has damaged my ability to do this. Now,
I have just closed my eyes again, climbed aboard the dream we betrayed. Job to take away my worries of today and leave tomorrow behind. Ooh,
and that spells it the best. Fine stereo.
Alan,
Ladies and gentlemen.
you having a nightmare? What if it's true?
Ladies and gentlemen.
Alan, it's a possibility, isn't it?
The very word secrecy is repugnant.
Secrets.
In a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers,
constant, extreme danger,
which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger,
extreme danger,
that an announced need for increased security.
what the hell is going on?
This is Conspiracy Queries with Alan Hart.
Will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control.
You're crazy.
And no officious, high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes.
Isn't the Pentagon suspicious that all the buildings blow up?
Or to withhold from the press and the public
I think you're just looking at things for the first time.
the facts they deserve to know.
You've had your whole f***ing life to think things over. What good's a few minutes more gonna do you now?
The facts they deserve to know. They deserve to know. Deserve to know. Deserve to know.
Welcome to... Hey, I'm on the wrong side. Hang on. Welcome to... Sorry. Finally got it. Now, what I wanted to say was... Well, I don't know how elevated I am today if I can't tell the difference between left and right. Yeah, no, I'm okay. I've just been confused because I've been reading a lot of the governmental proposals for Canada's legislation. Once again, we're going to center in Canada, where I now sit and span outwards into the world with all kinds of amazing cannabis news. So that's what's happening there. And let me just... Got a lot of ruckus going on here today. Oh, it's kind of weird. It's an eclipse. No, it's an equinox. See, I can't tell left and right. I'm really having trouble with my absolutes. I blame the officials, and we'll find out why that is shortly, as soon as I explain the things I read today that turned my head upside down. And they're all cannabis/usage/government based. So everybody will be able to play along. All right, so here's the thing. Before we get going, let me just say, maybe if you're not feeling well and you've got some condition and you might have just gotten out of the flu or you've got a worse condition, have you asked your doctor whether or not you might have a cannabinoid deficiency? Your doctor. Ask your doctor that question. Go into your doctor's office, whether he's diagnosing you or perhaps it's an annual visit for those of you that have health care or can afford to go and do such a thing, and ask your doctor, Doc, do I have a cannabis deficiency? Be serious about it, because it is serious. Cannabis deficiencies, I think, are taking over the planet. Now, we have been allowing these bullheaded, lack of researchability kinds of folks at the helm of how all of this is supposed to go forever. And it's really time, don't you think, to shut that down. It's really time. It's actually well beyond time. In fact, this should have been taken care of before I was even born. And that's a long time ago. It should never have happened in the first place, is what it is. Hi there, my name is Alan Park. You're listening to Green Crush Conspiracy Queries, episode 33 and 105. So, episode 33 of Conspiracy Queries. Sorry, I keep doing it. I got to get to this article. It's episode 33 of Green Crush and 105 of Conspiracy Queries. And we have a fantastic show today, I hope. I think so. I feel uncomfortable saying it, like, we have a fantastic show. I think we do. I've been through it. We have a guest today on the phone from New York City. Chris Griswold will be here later. He attended the University of Pittsburgh as an undergrad, and he has won 2 Keystone Press Awards for his student journalism. He's also attended the master's program at Ohio University's Scripps School of Journalism. What's going on with this journalist? You're probably wondering. And he also trained staff. He trained staff at the Scripps Survey Research Center. That's SCRIPPS, not Scripps. He has taught improv classes for college students in Pittsburgh, children in an Ohio homeless shelter, and blind performers in New York City, among others, and is currently engaged with the company's Thunderbolt Comedy and Engage Future. These are improv workshops. Maybe a lot of people know that I used to trade in the comedy business. I haven't for a while, but you can't really take that out of your blood, or it wasn't really there in the first place. I got held up by I had this nasty case of stage 4. If you're listening to me for the first time, I'm a prostate cancer. Some say survivor. I prefer victor. Thank you. Killed it. Have it on the run. It's all crying about how I missed my funeral 3 years ago. But I soldiered on, and I am a victor of the cancer situation. Not to say I didn't take a few hits in battle. There's some shrapnel that flies around no matter what when you're dealing with cancer, both in your mind and in your body. And so that's not the best thing in the world to get cancer, is it? But it's a great thing to be able to pull out of it and move on with your life with a substance that is completely unknown about and very, very well researched. That's the dichotomy I was trying to balance in my head earlier regarding this substance coming from the government of Canada. So I'm sure you'll enjoy it. I'm just going to turn that down a little. I like it a little bit underneath there because we have some noise in the background here especially, and I kind of want to hear that instead. So yeah, check into seeing if you have a cannabinoid deficiency. Let's go back to that and run in a contiguous line for a change. This is from Mass Roots. Based on the scant knowledge available regarding the endocannabinoid system and cannabinoid science overall, it's not available, this knowledge, folks. I mean, they can build CERN underneath Europe and smash atoms together over a couple of decades, but we haven't really had enough time at the table and the lab to see what's going on with cannabis, according to the people that are making the laws. And some researchers have theorized that many diseases like multiple sclerosis and fibromyalgia may be caused by a simple deficiency of endogenous, which is internally produced, cannabinoids, also called endocannabinoids. This condition has been labeled clinical endocannabinoid deficiency, or CECD. Check it out. You might have it. If you're sick with anything or from anything, it's kind of like you were trying to live your life without a key vitamin, because it is a key vitamin. It's a key cool thing. Speaking of which, Vitamin Weed, the book by our previous guest on this show, Michelle Ross, Dr. Michelle Ross, is either going to Portugal or is on her way to Portugal, where they got rid of all the laws and they don't arrest people and the cops aren't a bunch of crybabies about it. And we're going to get a first-hand report. We've had great difficulty tapping into, probably because none of us on the team here speak Portuguese, and I have been primarily dealing with English-speaking countries, but Michelle is going there, and she's going to have a lot of great information soon to tell us all about it. So let's move into Canada reveals plans for legalized weed packaging. As it says in Vice, our government can make anything uncool. That's true. Maybe Justin Trudeau should have worn these plain ugly bags on his hands and feet and body, made a little jacket out of it when he went to India. He couldn't have looked any more stupid than he did, wearing their traditional garb over the top for many days. Tactical errors on this guy is unbelievable. Then he claims nothing's wrong, even though everything is. By the way, his friend Stephen Bronfman was able to get lots of money together to help push this legislation through, because Stephen Bronfman's family, of course, did the exact same thing back when alcohol was illegal. Rum runners that they were and are, and profit from a base and continue to profit from a base of stealing the market in the first place, and it's happening again here in Canada. So if you're listening from somewhere else in the world, and you probably are, because we have more listeners around the world than this white and red maple leaf land, it's not as good as it sounds. And Canada's legalizing weed. No, well, yeah, kind of, sort of, not really. Recriminalizing it and not at all decriminalizing it. So here's from Vice, not to be outdone by Ontario Cannabis Store's underwhelming logo, which, by the way, cost $650,000. $650,000 to draw a circle with the very straight sans serif letters in there, OCS. $650,000. Now, the critics have been picking at that, including myself, and one of the reasons it costs that much, not just for the crazy line drawing, but also for the ability for the company who provided the logo to explain to the Ontario Cannabis Store, which is just a subdivision of the alcohol purveyor called the Liquor Control Board of Ontario. You know, the guys that used to fight cannabis availability until they could figure out a way to make sure they were the ones going to be profiting from it if it were going to be sold. Job done. Smooth, guys. Thanks for that union stepping up. But this $650,000, not just for the circle and three letters, thank goodness you're probably thinking, it's also for telling that company, the OCS, the cannabis, legal cannabis purveyor of how to market this product. Well, when you've stolen control from everyone else who touches it and labeled them as criminals, what kind of problems might you have selling it? What kind of marketing might you want to do? I think you might need to look into brainwashing. Not that commercials aren't already that most of the time. You'll have to look into brainwashing to find out how that works. Because when you're the only purveyor, do you really have to advertise? I mean, I know McDonald's has to advertise, but there's Burger King and Wendy's. But when you're the only person selling weed, I guess you think you're going to be pretty shitty at it. If you need help at the tune of $650,000. For $650,000, we'll tell you that you need to sell this in your store to establish market share, and you're the only store allowed to do this. And here's a circle with three letters in it. That'll be $650,000, please. Now, I want you to just take a look at the logo for my show here and understand that if you're looking at the Green Crush Conspiracy Queries logo, that's a merger of two logos, and one was $200 about 5 years ago. The other one was $300, and they look way better than the shitty Ontario government Kathleen Wynne bullshit packaging garbage. Their stuff looks like David's tea. Comes in a white foil pouch. Has the brand name and the percentages at the bottom. I do appreciate the percentages, but I really don't like the fact that in the top left corner, on the top right corner, it's going to be the company name, whether that's Tilray, who we'll get to in a minute, or Canopy Growth, or whoever the folks are that have a package. They're all going to be the same. Got to be the same. Because we're all 5 years old, apparently. And so in the top left corner of this package, there's the word THC. Okay, fair enough. And it has an outline of a leaf. Hey, who's not doing that, including us? And then it's all enmeshed inside of a red stop sign. Let me say that again. You got the word THC. You got the leaf, and it's inside a red stop sign. And where it says THC, that's in black. How much did they pay for that design? So what you're basically telling people is, stop THC. And then at the bottom of the package, it'll give you the percentage. THC 5%, total THC 10%, or whatever it is. CBDs will be in there too. But they literally put, like, do you go to the liquor store, these same freaks that sell this stuff now, and on the beer it says, don't drink this. Don't take it. Stop when it comes to alcohol. But please buy the beer because it's good for the economy. And the advertising agencies that make $650,000 to scribble on the floor and then tell a sole purveyor how to market things. And the only thing I can see on the upside of this is that how to market things, they may need some help marketing things, because once again, I am calling for a full boycott of this usurpation of citizens' rights. And I say boycott the OSC. They changed their name recently from OCRC, but I guess they realized everybody was going to call them RC or ASSI. So they ponied up just over $500,000 to find a circle and three letters to go inside of it. and teach themselves how to sell something, and nobody else is allowed to sell according to their rules. So this is government efficiency at its peak. Don't touch THC, it says on the package. Don't touch it. Stop. Go back. Is that the most nutty thing? Hey, don't eat these Oreos because, I mean, you could buy them and stuff because, people at the supermarket need their jobs and everything, but don't actually eat what's inside. And this is all for cannabis. Makes me sick. In a report released yesterday, the government outlined the strict regulations for how it wants wheat to be packaged and sold for the masses. The proposed regulations stipulate that cannabis be sold in white packaging with a bright red stop sign graphic featuring a cannabis leaf symbol and the THC along with a bright yellow health warning. Yeah. Packaged weed that looks like trail mix that may contain bleach. According to the report, each package should say, keep out of the reach of children, but the warnings don't end there. Here are some examples of the alleged health risks that Health Canada, which is our Maple Leaf version of the FDA, Health Canada says it wants to slap all of these restrictions on top of. Okay, so do not drive or operate machinery after using cannabis. Fair enough. That's going to be on the booze. More than 4,000 Canadians were injured and 75 died from driving using cannabis in 2012. I'd like to see the sources of these numbers. By the way, they don't seem to link to that. Cannabis can be addictive. Up to 1 in 2 people who use cannabis daily will become addicted. Now, what are we thinking about opioids, folks who wrote this guideline system? What do we think about that? Are we pulling people out? Have we done any traffic statistics on those folks? Have we understood that last year, 2017, was an opioid spike crisis, all provided by people? And by the way, when you buy an opioid, there's no little red symbol on the package that says, don't take this, but it's the only one killing people by the thousands. So I don't know what these... I'm really getting sick of this old place. Regular use of cannabis can increase the risk of psychosis and schizophrenia. Higher THC content can increase the risk of psychosis and schizophrenia. Yeah. Eating food can cause heart attacks as well, if you want to really get out there. Yeah, you can eat some food and get a heart attack while you're eating. Yeah, it's true. In a media briefing yesterday, Eric Costin, Director General, of the federal government's Cannabis Legalization and Regulation Secretariat, I hope they shoot this one the way they did that old horse, said the warnings are based on an exhaustive review of all available scientific research on cannabis. That's in quotes, by the way. Eric Costin. Love to get him on the show, Kim. Monday, Eric Costin, the Director General of the federal government's Cannabis Legalization and Regulation Secretariat, he says that the warnings are based on an exhaustive review of all the available scientific research on cannabis. Isn't that neat? They have been working on this for a while now. And even though they said it would be ready by July 1st, and it wasn't because the cops said they're not ready, and the stores said they're not going to be ready, and a lot of people are up in arms about it, so they're going to kick it down the hill again. But they know 100% enough to construct this, well, it's an architecture of disaster, really. Wait till they start pulling over people who aren't really impaired and charging them as though they are. Wait till they start doing that. Going to save a little money there. An exhaustive review of all... I just want to say that a few times because I'm leading into something. Is that too much of a say-so? An exhaustive review of all the available scientific research on cannabis. You can't have images and graphics other than the brand logo. They're going to be banned, and everything down to the font size. The font size is regulated, making the regulations even stricter than those in place for tobacco. You know, the thing that kills way more people than you can even imagine with pot that doesn't kill anybody. And alcohol. The packages will also need to be opaque. Can't see in there. Let's get some black glass. Every beer should be in a black tower bottle now. Let's not be able to see the beer inside. Oh, God. Can you imagine if kids saw that amber liquid inside through the... Yeah, well, it's okay. They can. Can I get a Corona, please? And, but you can't have that. You can't show a green leafy substance inside of a bag that has regulated font size. Do you understand how anal these people are? But once again, I'm going to move on to the next article here. We do have Chris Griswold standing by. We will be dialing him up shortly. We have, once again, though, this legislation and legalization and regulation from the Secretariat. Remember this, okay? Because I'm going to get to this again. An exhaustive review of all the available scientific research on cannabis. Wow. So then, at that level, I guess, with that much homework done already, and if you have detected a sarcastic tone within my voice, what other choice did you think there was? Big Pharma has officially entered the Canadian cannabis industry. Licensed weed producer Tilray, with an office in Toronto and a facility on the west coast on the island, I believe, has formed a strategic alliance with Sandoz Canada. One of Canada's largest licensed weed producers has formed a strategic partnership with Sandoz. This is a major pharmaceutical company, marking the first and much anticipated foray of Big Pharma into the legal cannabis industry. You know, the thing they were always fighting against forever. And it's just like the cops. There's a certain mindset that's becoming evident. They're basically vampiric, okay? They're like vampires, and they fight against something, and the people involved in that something are criminals and terrible people and low morals and every nasty thing you're going to say. Shut them down, bust them, force them into cages, ruin their lives, and then the company that didn't want it to be on the market goes ahead and puts it on the market. Sandoz Canada is an affiliate of Sandoz International, GmbH, which is part of the Swiss pharma giant Novartis AG. So basically one big-ass company, right? And, you know, if you're still one of those people that think, oh, you don't think the pharmaceutical companies are really, you know, you don't think they're really going to, you know, they're not going to be, you know, they just want to help everybody. I wish there was a pill for naivete. The agreement has two major components to it. First, it will see Tilray leveraging Sandoz's know-how and internal sales force to educate Canadian pharmacists and physicians about Tilray's medical cannabis products. Second, Sandoz and Tilray will partner up exclusively to develop new, non-combustible cannabis products such as gel caps, edibles, and sprays. And depending on the future regulatory changes, Sandoz could eventually become the wholesale distributor. I guess that's the idea, right? A lot of people, this is the Tilray Chief Executive Officer Secretariat. No, just kidding. He's just the Chief Executive Officer. Brendan Kennedy told Vice Money in an interview, this is a huge milestone for us, our industry, and the medical community at large. That's what they're saying. So that's what's going on. We're into the big money, and everybody that's you know, knowing what they're doing and doing it with care and attention over the last couple of decades. They're all crooks, right? Now, quickly over to the page of Canada.ca and the Health Canada.ca. Here's a page here called Making Urgently Needed Drugs Available. And if you're familiar with the opioid crisis, what's not an urgently needed drug beyond cannabis? They have special access programs, interim orders. They have access to drugs in exceptional circumstances, regulations. None of these delineate cannabis because they have the medical program going on. But this is a complete nonsense factory. I called the folks on the phone today. It took them about 25 minutes to tell me where this the results were for the proposed approach to the regulation of cannabis. Summary of comments received during the public consultation. And so that happened yesterday. There was a big media meet, and they told the media what was going on, and now I'm telling you guys what's going on. What they told us. I'm just trying to get Chris here. Let's get Chris on the phone. Gosh, I don't want to do that. I just want to get on with the call, man. Now we're on Google Hangouts here. Not exactly a commercial for them, I suppose. It just keeps cacking out on me. Oh, fantastic. So, yeah, great. Yeah, let's send it. Let's send in a report. Okay, so Chris, if Chris is listening, I've just been saddled with a bunch of nonsense about. I've got to update Google Hangouts apparently, so we'll just take a minute to do that. Got to update it. I just updated it like 3 days ago. All right. So, proposed approach to the regulation of cannabis. This is a summary of comments received during the public consultation. So they had a public consultation. People said what they thought, and people showed up and uttered facts that don't seem to be reflected in the legislation. And this is going on around the world, by the way. Hey, Ireland. Hey, Australia. Hey, hopefully soon, Portugal. And the South American stretch. We're down in the States. Thanks for coming. Thanks for listening. We really appreciate it. Chris is listening, and I'm trying to call Chris. But we'll just close this off. Remember all that research they did on all available research on that? Well, what about the fact that research has been proving marijuana cures cancer, and it's been covered up since 1974? And just before, here we go. We're going to bring Chris on in a second. Let me see if I can get him on the phone at least, because I do want to talk. Hangouts with... Okay, yeah, of course. Okay, so there he is. He's going to be on the phone in a second. Hopefully, right? Yeah. Are you there, Chris? No, it's ringing. Still ringing. Good gosh. Chris says he's listening, and there he is. Oh, we've got a 20-second delay at least. Okay, so there he is. I love live shows. Are you calling me at the same time? What's with the music?
I don't know. What's happening here? Hey.
Okay, hey, Chris Griswold is with us. Chris, just because I got a little stunted there with the tech, I'm just gonna play this little clip. If you heard, I was telling the crowd, the folks listening, the Green Crush supporters, I was telling them about how the government has just stated that they've done exhaustive research on all available sources, and then now there's this. There's this little report here, and I think it might turn things around. I had a little bit of it on last week, but we're really going to look at it today, and you'll be involved in this. Here we go.
Ontario has unveiled the name for the licensed outlets that will eventually sell legalized marijuana to the public. The chain will be called the Ontario Cannabis Store. The move comes as the federal government admits it still wants to know a lot more about the effects of the drug. CBC's Susan Lund has the story.
Sorry, did he say they still want to know more about the effects of the drug? I thought they'd gleaned all available research. Okay, well, let's see what the reporter has to say.
Are you talking to me?
People will be able to buy marijuana legally for a few months, but the federal government is already starting research into how marijuana may affect you.
They're already starting research? Hang on, when was this on the air? Oh, 10 days ago. 10 days ago, they already started the research. That's what they're saying here on the CBC. This is funded by the government as well. So 10 days ago, a report came out that said the federal government still needs to know all kinds of things. Meanwhile, they're also saying they've done all the research that can possibly be done. And this is why I was having trouble with left and right and everything else at the beginning of the show. Listen to this.
There was money in last week's federal budget for this. As well, there are already studies looking into a range of things, everything from how pot affects people's ability to drive and how it may affect women who want to become pregnant.
Okay, so we'll stop it there because I do have Chris on the phone, but they're now looking into the fact that they need to know exactly how it affects you when you drive, on the one hand. And on the other fucking hand, they're making up rules about how they know what it's like to be driving on it. And assembling another architecture of some bullshit repressive laws they don't have the science for to prove whether you're incarcerated. You're going to be incarcerated. Whether you're going to be high or not. Or impaired or not. And just because you're packing cannabis in your bloodstream, I'm so sorry, you've just admitted you've done all the research, and then you've also admitted you don't have enough of the research. Well, listen to this show, folks. Policy setters. I'm telling you right now, I told you last week, I'm never going to stop telling you. This stuff doesn't impair you at the same level across the board. You could have someone having a tiny amount of this and be on the moon, someone else having a gram of oil and forgot they took it. So just back off of the bullshit. It's right in your face. This is the CBC telling us they need all this, and then the Health Canada saying, we've done all the research. It's like watching cartoons. A little kid could see the logic lines in this riding astray. So this is the kind of bullshit we have to deal with. This is the kind of oppression we have to deal with. And it's never ending, apparently. So why am I on the edge about this? Because we just keep allowing this kind of thing to happen and subjugating ourselves. And why do that when the science is in? You heard Terence McKenna at the beginning of the show, probably from the mid-'80s or early '90s. Probably done more research on cannabis than the whole government and everybody else put together. The research has been done by a bunch of cops that don't want to lose their jobs, so they've reorganized their job descriptions to fit around the fact that if you really remove cannabis from the legalities and you weren't going to be charged with it, you probably have to lay some police off, is what would happen. There'd just be fewer of them, all kinds of things. Lower budget. Wouldn't need to be putting people in jail for cannabis and wrecking their lives. Wouldn't need to go to court later on and then perhaps, usually in Canada especially, have those charges thrown out. This is what we're doing now. So we understand those people of that mindset just can't get past that kind of thing. So we're turning to the creative, leaving these idiots behind and turning to the creative. And that's why I have Chris Griswold on the show today. Chris, thanks for hanging in there. How are you? Chris. Let me guess. He's not there? Okay. Nope. He was gone. Let's hope we can get him back. This is live show stuff, folks.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. There's Chris. Fantastic. Thanks. How's New York today?
Great, great. A little overcast, but it's nice out.
Nice and overcast. We had some sun here. We've been getting sun like crazy for quite some time. But I'm just getting a message from Kim now, letting everybody know how things go in the moment because it's a live show. Why am I trying to hide that? What's Kim saying? Just before we get to Chris and find out exactly what he's doing and how he's been using cannabis as a creative aid in the teaching of improv and, comedic acting skills. Now, Kim, I don't know what you mean by timed out. But anyway, I don't need to know what you mean, apparently, because I am speaking with Chris. So, Chris.
Yeah.
Where are you from?
Where am I from? I'm from a small town in Pennsylvania called Franklin.
Named after Ben?
Yes, definitely. Mm-hmm. It's, I believe it's actually older than, I don't know. It's an old place. It's also the birthplace of the oil industry. The first commercial oil well was dug there. So the hillsides are just littered with these aging Victorian mansions.
Oh, great. And you lived in one of those?
No. No, I wish. No. It's a nice little town it's just kind of in the middle of nowhere.
Okay, so then from there you decided to go to University of Pittsburgh. You got to be an undergrad, and you got into journalism. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, I studied journalism at the University of Pittsburgh as an undergrad and Ohio University, the Scripps School of Journalism there. You kind of rattled off a bunch of my accolades there.
Yeah.
But I got out of grad school in 2009, and there were not any jobs in journalism or advertising, both of which I had studied at OU. And I went back to teaching improv. I started teaching improv in 1998, 99, somewhere in there. So I've been doing it for 20 years.
Wow.
And I got all the way back into it here in New York. I've worked for the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater, for the training center there. And I decided to go into business for myself.
So you're a funny guy.
That's that's up to individual taste, I suppose. But yeah, I think so.
Okay, good, because it says we do know that a lot of your students, improv students, I guess, as opposed to any kind of journalism teaching you were doing on the side. Just kidding. have gone on to Saturday Night Live, The President Show, very funny, Inside Amy Schumer, The Kroll Show, some really good shows here, Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
New Girls, the only one I haven't seen on the list, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and Happy Endings. So you've got a pretty good track record for turning out some good ones, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there's only so much I'm doing. My job as a teacher, as a coach, is I serve as a guide. I help somebody figure out where they want to go, and then I help them get there. It's hard for me to claim that, you know, other people's successes are my own, because really they're getting themselves there. I'm just kind of spotting them.
You're a spotter.
Fixer. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, you're doing what you're doing. You're teaching.
Yeah.
You're teaching folks, and you know, I went to Second City for a couple of years with a couple of different teachers back then. I didn't finish the whole package, and then I got into stand-up later on. But you know, I've helped. I'm sorry.
Where did you do Second City? Was that at Toronto?
In Toronto. Yeah. Not the real one. The second one should have been called Third City, I guess.
Yeah, Third City.
But anyway, so before we get into, I really want to talk about the creative. I really want to speak about and have you speak about how it is that you employ your technique involving cannabis.
Sure.
But before we get to that, I want to play a little clip here from you, and you're on YouTube, and you're speaking about ADD, depression, and bipolar disorder. And now I'm not going to play the whole clip, but we're just going to get a little taste of this. And I just want you to talk about that and how you got ahead of that curve and how you deal with that. Or you might have put it behind you completely, or how you mitigate it if you haven't done that. So here's a little clip from Chris. Here we go.
My name's Chris Griswold. I'm an improv teacher. When I was 7, I was diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. At the time, it was called hypoactive. Now it's called inattentive type. As a teenager, I was diagnosed with depression, later classified as dysthymia, which is a nice base coat of depression. And then in my 20s, I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. I don't like calling it mental illness because I don't feel sick. The thing that I came around to understanding was that a lot of the things that make me special and make me talented and make me, you know, a value to myself and to others are derived from the things that make life difficult for me at times. So it's not that there's something wrong with me, it's that I just have a different set of circumstances.
Okay, so that's pretty brave stuff. You're on this, what is it, Project UROC, and You Are Okay.
Right, yeah. There's actually, I think there's two mental health programs. One that's Project You Are Okay, and then I think there is also like a You Rock program.
Yeah, that's how it came off to me.
They're not connected to each other at all. Yeah. Yeah. No, I think it's important to talk about mental health. I think a lot of people don't talk about it, and it's just one thing that's important for me to get across to people is that a lot of things that are labeled as mental illness are really just a different mindset or a different set of circumstances. And that doesn't mean it's not all negative. You know, I think that's really important for people to understand. We go through a lot of different mindsets. We go through a lot of altered states of consciousness just in life. Like we've all had the experience where you're driving down the road and then you realize, oh, I need to make a turn here because you've been so deep in thought. Things sort of become automatic or autonomic. And so that's what I started. The reason I got obsessed with improv was it started speeding up my brain. I have, as I think I mentioned there, I have ADHD, inattentive type. It takes me longer to respond to things mentally. But with improv, I was able to put myself in motion and catch myself. I knew I knew what people were saying to me much faster than before I had gotten into improv.
So when someone's talking to you in improv, you're better able in that moment to sort out what they're saying and come up with the yes and or the funny reply or setting them up for their next line. You're playing the game better.
Well, I mean, I'm talking about in life. You know, after learning improv, it sped up my brain all the time.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. In improv, that's where you picked it up, and then you were able to bounce back really quickly in that sort of artificial construct, and then you took that into reality.
Yes, and I think of improv as sort of a access panel to your brain. You can use it as a way to, you can practice skills in your improv that will then affect your life. I bring that approach with me to my teaching, and I got to a place where people started calling me their improv shaman. It was like over the course of a week, I had 2 different people call me that, and I started thinking about that more and kind of expanding the way that I approach my teaching. And I think that's part of what led me to experimenting with having these workshops where people come in and they've already smoked a little, and then we use that mindset, we use that sort of mental preset to bring forth some of the skills that they might not be using all the time.
Okay, so I like this if I have it right. What you're saying is you learned all this, you figured it all out, you got the bounce from improv that you were able to bring into your real-life conversations, which gave you a lot more confidence. And then you were able to take that and bring it into the class, and then adding the cannabis.
Oh yeah. No, the cannabis, because the thing is, the cannabis is it is a small part of what I do overall, but these workshops they're amazing. I really love doing them. It was important to me. I knew that it would sound fun to do. I mean, it sells itself, certainly, but it was important to me that it not be a gimmick, that people actually get something out of it. And it really has had a dramatic effect on people that have taken the workshop.
And are we allowed to say where this happens? Not an address or anything?
I'm sorry, you broke up one moment.
Okay.
What'd you say?
I said, can you tell us whereabouts you do these sessions and how you go about taking your class of, I don't know how many people you have, and then partaking? I imagine you do it all at the same time and sort of get ready at the same time. How does it work?
Well, they come in. I don't provide anything. I don't. They come in with whatever they have. They smoke beforehand. I ask that people don't get in over their heads with it. I want them to still be in a kind of
So it's up to them to get high before they come in.
Yes. Yeah.
I was just curious about that, because I thought if you have someone getting high 10 minutes ago versus someone who did a bowl like an hour ago.
Right. No, it's supposed to be right before the workshop.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Right before.
And this is in New York?
This is in New York. This is in Brooklyn mostly, is where I've run it. The next ones I'll be running will be in the financial district of Manhattan. But I've also traveled with it. And one of my favorite places was in Providence, Rhode Island. And that was probably one of the biggest, most attended ones that I've run. We probably had 30 some people there. And they surprised me. 5 of the people that were there had never done improv before. And so I threw out my lesson plan and I adjusted to make room for these 5 people that had never done this before. And I just sort of rewrote the curriculum on the fly that day. And it was a really, really amazing experience.
Talk about improv. So that's,
sure.
You just drew up a class plan on the spot. That's incredible.
Yeah.
So go ahead and tell us then, how does it begin? I mean, give us a couple of ideas about what because the thing that I was able to glean from researching your, and I might have this wrong, but I hope not, is that you have found that the class being on, and I'm sure some of them have done some improv before, but you had those 5 new folks. But you took people, so you've got brand new newbies going right into the cannabis level, and then you've got other people that have done it before going in on the cannabis level and having done it not on cannabis, presumably, if that's possible. And then, but you have found particular threads to pull on that are more effective in a cannabis-laden class than otherwise. Is that right?
Oh, definitely. For one, it sets a different tone for the workshop. It's also important to note that I am sober during these workshops. Mm-hmm. I am sort of safeguarding everyone. I'm kind of seeing over everybody, and they can feel a little bit more like there's somebody watching over them. So there's it's always important for me to create a safe space for people in any of the workshops or classes that I run. But so I'm completely stone cold sober in this. They come in and eliminates a lot of their anxiety. A lot of the real enemy of improv is fear. It's anxiety. It's worry about what's going to happen and what could come next. And I always keep in touch with my students afterward and ask for their experiences, because I want to shape this and make it stronger, make it something that people can really grow from. And a lot of them tell me that they do things in that workshop for the first time. They initiate the scene. They give the first line in an improv scene. A lot of people get scared of that. Or they play characters, or they were better able to understand the intentions of the person they were performing with. And then since then, because they had that sort of muscle memory, they're able to continue to do that. So it just opens up skill sets. Yeah, I mean, everything for me is in improv is psychology and ritual behavior. I do a lot of reading on brain function and psychological tests and things like that. And so it was really nice to bring all of this together in these workshops and see the effect, both in the workshop and afterwards, of how people experienced it and what they were able to do.
Yeah. So you did how much teaching of this before you introduced cannabis to the routine? Like how many years?
I've been teaching for 20 years.
So 20 years in, you go, hey, let's try this.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes. I had never smoked with any sort of regularity up until a couple of years ago. And I got some insight into, I'm always kind of keeping an eye on myself mentally, just trying to check in with myself, see where I am. I try to be very present. And I was thinking about how the cannabis was affecting my brain and my perception and my behavior. And then I applied that to the improv.
Wow. That's great. So now you've taken cannabis and done improv, as well as being the teacher when you're sober.
Honestly, I have not.
You got to try.
It would be about, here's the thing. I got to say this. This is important to me. I always advise my students that they should not be inebriated in any way for a show unless that's the theme of the show. Because I've seen improv shows where one person is drunk or stoned or whatever, and the rest of the team is taking care of them. I don't think that's okay. But if you've got a show where it's like, hey, come and we're gonna do cannabis themed improv, or we've got a team that's high, I think that's totally fine.
Yeah, that would be good. You should try that. We have
sure.
We've done shows here, and yeah. I'm sure we weren't the first to do it in Toronto, where it's a drunk show. And and you do a set, and then the same comics are drinking like crazy. There's a little intermission, and they come back, and then they do another set or whatever they want to do, and they're hammered. And
that's really
it's pretty funny. Yeah, the crowd would really take pleasure in seeing people just change. The same folks that were up there before, they're just different. But that's amazing. So so when you first started to realize, oh, wow, I'm really getting some great results here. Of course, the students didn't know that right off the hop, right? They're just in it, doing it. And
no. I mean, a lot of them don't even, I'll be honest, to some people, it just sounds like a fun time. And they don't, so what's great about it is they come in and they have a good time. And that even takes more of the pressure off of them. They're just there to have a good time. But they end up leaving knowing, I mean, these 5 people now, they know the basics of improv now. They know how to perform with other people now. It just kind of sped up the process in a long way. And I don't normally have a workshop that has 30 people in it. Like I normally try to keep it smaller. But that one was just, I was working with a group and they brought in 30 people, and that was the other thing I had to adjust in that Providence workshop. But we got to a place where I had this moment where I was like, okay, here's what we're going to do. Everyone grab a chair. We put the chairs in a big circle. I had them turn the chairs away from each other and sit down. So now they're in a big circle facing away from each other. And then I had them just do audio improv. But they were, they could all see what they were talking about. I had done a lot of reading on altered states of consciousness in general, partially because performing improv puts you in an altered state where your brain is just functioning at a higher speed, a higher efficiency if you can lock into it. And then you'll come off stage and be like, what did we just do? I don't remember what I just did. And so I was looking for other ways to activate parts of that experience in, not on stage, but in practices and classes. And I was reading a lot about things like tribes where they take young boys out and make them swallow red ants so they have visions, all these strange things. But another thing that I'll do is I'll have people do jumping jacks or dance and then sit down and in the dark, again, do just audio improv where they're just doing the sounds and the voices of it. And it's almost like some sort of vision quest we do with the improv.
Wow. That does. And do you turn the lights off for that? You might as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, lights are off for that. With the cannabis, I don't turn the lights off because it makes people a little sleepy. So I that's why I have them face away from each other for that.
Okay, tell me another. Hey, tell us. You know what a herald is, right?
I'm sorry, you just cut out.
Okay, you know what a herald is.
Yeah, hello.
Hello. Oh, he's gone. Yeah, well, that was fun. I'm going to call him right back. We're not done yet. Gee whiz. Come on, folks. Are you there?
Yeah, live show. What's up? Can you hear me?
Yeah, live show. Yeah, it's cacking out. I can hear you.
What'd you say? Tell us another what?
Do you know what of course you know what a herald is.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So tell everybody what a herald is, and I'm sure you must have tried this just for the folks, because not everybody knows what a herald is, and you'll tell it better than I will, because I'm a stand-up and I'll just use scorn. Okay. But tell them what it is, and tell us if you had any kind of affectations towards that from the cannabis, from that game.
Oh, okay. So a herald is a sort of a standard, like, I think of it as a learning tool for learning improv, long form improv. It was created. Oh God, I remember when he came up with it. There was this guy Del Close that came up with it. He was big into witchcraft and heroin, and he created an improv form. He created an improv form called the herald. And the herald is simple. It's you get a suggestion from an audience. You might do something called an opening, where you pull that suggestion apart, whether it's through words or movement or scene work or whatever, and then that just gives you more ideas to work with. And then from there, you go into the herald. And the herald is, let's say, scene A, scene B, and scene C. It's 3 different scenes that have nothing to do with each other, but all derived from this suggestion in some way. Then you revisit those scenes. Well, actually, I should say, after the first 3 scenes, there's then another scene called a group game. Everybody can come into that scene and just do even something silly. It doesn't really matter. It's just kind of, some people think of it as the palate cleanser. It's just a way to kind of break up the flow of the set. Then you go back to the characters or settings or ideas, anything you like from scene A, B, and C, and you do scene A1, scene B1, scene C1, and you just do some new iteration on the ideas that you like. You do another one of these palette cleanser group game scenes, and then again, you come back and you revisit the ideas from A, B, and C in their most heightened, most absurd form.
So you have to be pretty well versed on. I don't know if that's your siren or mine, but anyway,
that's mine.
Is it really? Oh, it sounded like a.
Yeah, I'm in a very noisy part of Brooklyn. Yeah.
I'll bet we get that too. Every show gets a siren someplace.
Sure.
Yeah. So
so it's this kind of formulaic structure that's a way that people can get together and put together a comedy show. But that structure also shows up in a lot of modern TV shows like Seinfeld or 30 Rock. Where you'll have 3 separate threads that all come together in the very end.
Right. And so you've taught. Have you played with that while using cannabis at all? That structure particularly?
I haven't with that structure in particular, partially because I find the herald to be fairly restrictive at times, and my goal, especially in these work, I do certainly teach it and work with it in other classes and other workshops, but in these, it's more about in the moment. It's more about opening people up rather than having them adhere to a set of rules or guidelines, and I find the herald to be somewhat constraining at times. Okay. So I want to open these people up. Yeah. Other forms that I'll teach like the improvised movie. There's a group in Kansas City, Missouri that performs, that I've coached for 3 years over webcam, called That's No Movie. And they perform to comic book conventions and sci-fi conventions and things, but they improvise a movie on stage. They tell you what to see, what you're hearing, what you're picturing. They play all the characters. And that's a kind of form that I like a little more.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah. So you were able to travel around with this. Are you only doing the cannabis in New York, or you're doing it in these other places as well?
No, definitely. I'm doing it in other places. I would like my current one of my current plans right now is to reach out to theaters where cannabis is legal, which there's more now, which is amazing, and run this along with some other workshops that I teach. When I did the workshop in Providence, I also taught them. They wanted to do a Halloween show. They said, we want to do a Tales from the Crypt show. And I said, okay. And so I just made up a Tales from the Crypt improv form that's amazing. Their performance of it, I'll say, is just so good. And I taught that over 2 days. And then I also taught the Improv 420 workshop.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So let me get back to your. I wanted to get back to that thread where you said that these often perceived to be terrible things, these conditions that we have, mental conditions, and you fight against this better than anybody I've ever heard about. So how do you push back on that? And what exactly is your whole rationale with? Because ideally, I mean, most people think, do you really want to have this particular mental disorder, be it depression or anxiety or what have you, or insecurities, or do you not? And you're saying in certain ways it's okay. So just expand on that a little bit.
Well, I think it is important that everyone should be checking in with themselves regardless, but especially if you've been diagnosed with bipolar disorder or any of these other things, I think you really do need to keep tabs on yourself. I think that therapy is very, very important for all of this, and because that's going to help guide you. And then also, for a lot of people, prescription drugs work well. I still take, to this day, I still take Ritalin.
Okay.
Yeah, and that helps me. What's important is medication should be working in a way that it alleviates some of the difficult effects of your condition, but it allows you to still be the sort of to have all of the benefits of it, the creativity, the drive. People with ADHD can read other people immediately. That's what helps me be a good teacher and coach and director. And I would not want to give that up. It's a set of skills that most people don't have, but I have because of a lack of certain chemicals in my body.
That's incredible, because what I've experienced, speaking about these kinds of things with people and reading official publications, official breakdowns and scientific stuff about these illnesses, or whatever you want to call them. Something that's good is that I know a lot of people in the entertainment business specifically, but some other people too, but a lot of people in the entertainment business who are very funny, very, very funny people. And a lot of them, and I'm not going to name names, of course, but a lot of them that I know that have told me anyway that they don't want to shed all of their mental problems, hang-up situations. Maybe they have a persona of drinking all the time. They don't really quit drinking, because they take it on stage and they're funny when they're drinking, and people respond well and they have a career. There's a genuine fear there of even doing the work to change, what would effectively be problems. They go, yeah, I know they're problems, but God, I'd hate to change my whole psyche, my whole physicality, my everything, and then maybe I'm not funny anymore. Maybe I don't want to go on stage anymore. Maybe I'm interested in something else now. What's that?
The fear. Yeah, no, that is the fear of people with a mental condition. They're worried they're going to give up what makes them special or unique or what gives them an edge. And I'm going to tell you, you get to keep those things when you go into therapy and engage in medication. The goal is that you keep the things that work for you. So if anybody out there is worried about losing what makes them special, losing their ability to be creative by getting healthier, I'm telling you, the goal is to keep those things while also getting healthier.
Okay. Well, that's amazing. I've never heard that. That's what I mean. Everybody either strives to get rid of all those problems, or but you're seeing some benefits to these characteristics, because not everybody has them, right? Not everybody has them.
No, certainly. I mean, I pick up on body language. I would say, you know, I live near. I mean, I teach near Times Square a lot, and that can get a little overwhelming. But if I can just center myself, you know, it gets overwhelming in that I'm picking up on everyone's body language around me. I tend to be kind of empathetic and just pick up what people's emotions are, and it can get a little overwhelming unless I take a moment to just center myself and focus up. But you know, that can be a difficult thing. But in a classroom, it's great. I can tell when somebody's about to make a move. I can tell when somebody's got an idea but they don't know how to use it. I can tell if somebody's imagining something or pulling an idea from memory. And I love that I have those skill sets, and I wouldn't give those up. But it's also important to me that I'm able to live a full life.
And they come from your ADHD? That you're able to. Yeah. I don't understand the connection there. It's fascinating. I don't dispute it for a second, but I've never heard this before. It's fascinating to me. And I don't know how. Okay, so you have ADHD. Now you're supposed to be able to read everybody? That's incredible.
That's one of the things that makes having ADHD difficult, is there are things that you can do that other people don't even understand you can do. But sometimes simple things that are simple to other people are actually a little bit more difficult for you. But ADHD, people with ADHD make great teachers and therapists, counselors. They're very good at salespeople. They're very good at sales. It's just because people with ADHD are sensitive and are picking up more information than most people. We're just kind of like opened up and raw in a way. And if you can learn how to filter that and you can learn how to direct it, it can be a very, very, very effective tool.
Have you ever heard of NLP?
What's NLP? There's so many acronyms. What is this?
Yeah. It's the neuro-linguistic programming.
Right. Yes. I think that I'm doing some version of that.
I think you are too. It's what it reminds me of when I hear about it, that you're able to read signals. I saw an interesting video the other day where a guy was talking about guilty people, murderers, that kind of thing, and police interviews. And some of these cats are really good at picking that stuff up, and they'll ask questions and lead people into confessing or being able to prove things by reading their. Like there was this one particular case where the guy says, the investigator says he's asking the alleged killer if he had anything to do at all with convincing someone else, sort of like a Manson thing, to convince someone else to go and do something. And the guy said, no, absolutely not. But there he is, slightly nodding his head yes and no, up and down instead of side to side.
Right.
And he's I think this guy's lying. And then sure enough, they found out exactly the same thing. And he said, you wouldn't even believe, he says, I'm going to do it now for you. And he does the little head nod thing. And he says, actually, that's way bigger than it was. You could just tell, you could see it, you get honed, you get used to it. And there's all these signals. Yeah. Have you seen True Romance? You know that scene with Christopher Walken and Dennis Hopper?
Yeah. It's been a long time, but
yeah, he says a guy's got 17 tells when he lies. A woman has 20, but a guy has 17. Little physicalities. So that's what you're heightened to that when you have ADHD.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And then what was important was that I learned how to make that work for teaching. So whether it's with Thunderbolt Comedy, which is where I'm teaching improv, and that's where I have my Improv 420 workshop, or I've got a newer company with a partner called Engage Improv for Life, and we train all sorts of soft skills. We teach people how to talk to family members they're estranged from. We teach people how to be better communicators and more empathetic and more emotionally engaged. What I do is I pick up on all these movements of people, and I figure out ways, even in the moment, I kind of create a maze that they have to go through these improv exercises. And when they come out the other side, they have a new set of skills. They're better able to speak to somebody. They're better able to understand their loved ones. They're better able to sell something. So I have, it's been very beneficial for what I do.
And it must have been a great thing to figure that out that day.
Oh, definitely.
You're 20 years in and you go, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I got to get these guys ripped and then we'll see what happens. But they're not ripped though, right? They're just,
no,
still functioning.
They're definitely still functioning. It's I don't want them smoking a whole bowl. Maybe like a hit off of a one hitter or something like that, and that's enough.
Yeah.
Just to kind of bring those things forward. I think I might have said it earlier. Everything for me centers on the limbic system in improv. Limbic is in the back of your brain. It's the oldest part of your brain evolutionarily. And
I don't recall talking about this. Maybe maybe expand on it if we touched on it. Maybe, but
sure. I don't think we did. No.
Yeah,
I think I started going there and I went some other way. But so I mean, what I see a lot in improv is I see people that are either they're putting pressure on themselves to be interesting, so they're putting a lot of work on their right brain. Or they're trying to do improv the right way, and they're putting a lot of work on their left brain, on their logic center. But if I get people focused on behavior and emotion and long-term memory, which are situated in the back brain, everything opens up. Everything becomes available to them without conscious work. And so one of the things that marijuana, that cannabis has allowed me to do is to elevate that ability of the back brain and of the limbic system of the lizard brain to be guiding them through their improv rather than something that they're trying to suppress so that they can be really creative or really smart.
Wow. That's specific. You're like a specialist. This is great.
I am. Here's the thing. For the past 4 years, I have focused entirely on teaching improv just independently. People come to me. I'm not affiliated with a theater directly, but people come to me, and I have used it as my laboratory to an extent to try to understand people better and try to get them to where they need to go. Something that I do is I pick this up from a psychological psychological test that I found one time, and what it was this: they would tell students that they were going to be participating in this psych experiment, and as they walked them down the hall to where the experiment was supposedly going to happen, they would say, well, after the experiment is over, we have chocolate cake and we have fruit. Which one would you like? Now, some of these students before they went down that hall, were given a 7-digit number to remember to give to the people that were running the test, running the experiment. And the people that held onto that 7-digit number generally wanted chocolate cake more than the people that didn't. Right? So if I've got someone that I'm teaching improv and they're getting in their head and they're worried about what they're doing, I will give them a 7-digit number that they have to repeat to me after that scene, and the scene will be amazing from that point on.
Okay, you're a mad scientist then. Basically, we're gone into that level. That's incredible. I love this. And then
that's what I do.
The other folks will eat the fruit, and you can pin this down. This is so fun. Hey, when you were speaking with anyone, not to mention names or whatever, but just like in an anonymous fashion, other people that attend your class, like these folks that have gone on to work on these television shows and movies, etc. Has anyone else? Have you been able to form another friendship or contact based on a person who also feels, came at it with ADD or ADHD, etc. The things that you have managed to use as tools rather than to suffer from.
Well, I'm very open. I tell people that I teach from essentially what were originally my coping mechanisms with ADHD. I mention it all the time. I think it's important for people to know that. But then any sort of a vulnerability for me allows more vulnerability from them. And frequently I find that people do have ADHD inattentive type, which is what I have. A lot of people, comedy is just filled with people with depression and bipolar disorder. There are certainly schizophrenics. There are certainly, people with borderline personality disorder. and so much anxiety, so much social anxiety, which an audience might not expect from the people performing on the stage live, doing improv in front of them. So much anxiety and social social anxiety disorder in comedy and improv.
Yeah, I had a bunch of that. I didn't know what it was. When I was starting out, I got off amateur night, and then I was going around doing gigs. And every time the gig would get closer, particularly on the road, the hours leading up to actually going into the club or the venue or whatever it was, I would just be like, oh no, I won't be able to do this again. Like, I can't do it. I don't trust myself that they're going to come, and then, consistently would bang through, get another good set, and just keep going. And, you have a few bad sets here and there, who doesn't? But I was amazed that I couldn't seem to get past the notion of the fear of going on the next time. I think that took about 4 years to iron out for myself.
That makes sense. Yeah. I mean, that's something a lot of people go through. Can I ask you a question, actually?
Sure, yeah.
How has cannabis affected anxiety for you?
Well, when you're dead, you don't have anxiety. And
Sure.
I managed to avoid that appointment with the Grim Reaper.
Right.
But aside from the anxiety, the initial, I remember the very first time I smoked a joint, which I was well too young to do. And it was probably, it was super powerful, or it hit me that way. And it immediately felt amazing and different and weird. And then within about 10 minutes or some small piece of time, I did get very paranoid, like never before in my life. And then I was worried because my mom was coming home from work, and now it's dinner time and I'm still high. I remember sitting in the chair in the living room, just watching TV and staring at the tube, pretending to be the straightest, most sober person you've ever seen in your life. And I think I got away with it because she never brought it up. But I was just so transfixed by, I can't let her know I'm high, I shouldn't say anything, and very anxiety laden. But again, you're not ready. You're too young. It's too quick. And gradually over time, I learned how to use it better. So for my anxiety, it just takes the edge right off. It's like having a rough piece of wood handrail, and then you've sanded it down really nicely. That's the difference that I feel with it.
I like that. Yeah, absolutely.
It's and it's not just about performing. There are a lot of different situations where it came up when I was going in and out of the hospital for tests every month, or the doctor's office for tests every month. I would find that, and this is just recently, but because of the illness, I would get more anxiety laden than I could remember, because I'm like, okay, 1 week I have to go in and get the blood tested, and then the next week I get the readings, and we hear what the doctor has to say about it. And even though you're feeling fine all month, I always get a little bit nervous, and on the way to, oh God, what if he says something bad again? Oh God. And you're making up all this shit. And then he's like, oh yeah, everything's good. And you're reset back to normal. So while I have that anxiousness, if I'm on my way to those, potentially life-changing or life-dampening events, I still partake. And I find it takes the edge off. That's what I like it for. That's why people like to drink, I think, is take the edge off. You've had a long, terrible day, and they just want to go dull. But it doesn't make me go dull. It just diminishes that anxiety state,
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, improv has allowed me to take care of some of the things like that. If I'm in a dentist chair, I can make myself just pass out. I can just conk out real quick.
Oh, that's the gas they use for that, I think.
Oh yeah, sure. I wish. I've never actually gotten that before. No, it's so funny. But all we're doing is we're talking about mindsets, and we're talking about altered states. We're talking about states of being, and cannabis will help you get there. But it's certainly just one of a number of ways to help you adjust and help you live your life in an easier way, or in a more efficient way, even sometimes.
And have you thought about why, when you're saying all those things that I happen to agree with, it's called a crutch by those in power, and then if you're using a prescription drug, it's of course normal, and it's not a crutch at all. You need that; it's your medicine. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Because I know you were talking about the opioid crisis that's being treated differently from everything else.
Yeah.
Because it's mostly a white issue. But when the same exact thing was happening with other drugs, such as crack, the same desperation of we have to do something wasn't coming about. I don't know. I could really get into that. I get really frustrated with people trying to fix the effects of a problem instead of the source of the problem. And really, to me, the source of the problem is often just is income inequality, racism, and sexism.
Oh yeah, those are our founding pillars.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't.
Go ahead, take a dive. I'm interested.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just it is frustrating me. It's not just. It's funny. Marijuana is becoming more acceptable, which is great. But the FDA, like in the United States, the FDA is going after other things that can't be trademarked and copyrighted. So whether it's kava or kratom or whatever, they're going after anything that a pharmaceutical company can't say, oh, we invented this.
Yeah. And then now in Canada we have this I just said earlier on the show, we have a pharmaceutical company heavily involved now. All of a sudden this is big news. And of course one of our largest, at least in Eastern Canada, one of the largest drug purveyors is Shoppers Drug Mart, who have been never friendly to the notion. Now they're in on it, and they weren't included in the legislation as it was originally written. But dollars pass hands, right? That's what happens.
Right. Now that there's a chance to gentrify the cannabis industry, and get money off of it and make it a whiter industry, then that's what they're gonna do. It's very frustrating because it's very frustrating.
Oh, you're not acting either. I know you're genuinely frustrated. No, it's awful. No,
it's important to me. Like, I think first of all, the income inequality in general is very frustrating to me. I saw some charts. You always see charts on the internet. Well, I just saw stuff recently that showed how much of pollution and just what we've done to the earth is just being done by the top 1% of people with money in the world.
Yeah.
And how much people are always talking about overcrowding or overpopulation on the earth. But if we just shared wealth, everyone could actually have the resources they need and have a healthier life and a happier life. And it's very frustrating to me that we just made these kind of arbitrary agreements along the line where we go like, yeah, people can accrue wealth far past what they actually need while other people are suffering. And it just seems crazy to me that we can't go, you know what, let's just revise that.
Yeah, I've been banging on here about the monetary policy in this country for a while, both on and off the show and other shows. And it's completely, it's an inequitable situation. It's also unsustainable. But here we go. We're still going with this.
Right.
There's a financial collapse. It doesn't make sense to me that the house my parents bought for $15,000 has been paid off, and then sold again at a higher number, and then resold 3 or 4 more times, and now it's over $1 million. It's crazy.
That's crazy. That is crazy.
Yeah. So listen, where can folks get a hold of you? Because we have to get going here, Chris. It's been really artistically fantastic talking to you. This is a great idea. I'm going to try to apply some of these things in my own endeavors.
Sure. You can follow me on Twitter at Chris Griswold. That's CHRISGRISWOLD. You can find me pretty easily there. I just had to redo the company that I do these Improv 420 workshops under, Thunderbolt Comedy. I just got the website back up. If you go to thunderboltcomedy.com, you can see about upcoming New York City workshops. And then also, if people are interested in having these come to their area, I'd be happy to travel with these and bring them to people's homes, people's theaters, and run these anywhere. That's amazing. Would you consider a trip north of the border? You bet I would. All right, well, I'm going to look into this. I think it's going to be something that we can try to do here. There's a couple of places in Toronto where we might be able to do that. So I'll get back to you later on about that. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing this. 20 years in, you found a new twist. Yeah, that's right.
That's amazing. Good for you. Well, thank you very much, Chris, and thanks for listening to the show, and we'll have you on again sometime.
Great. Thanks for having me.
All right, take care.
You too. Bye.
Chris Griswold, we had some connectivity issues, nowhere near as bad as it has been with a couple of other guests in the past where I had to bail on a couple, but we managed to pull it out with Hangouts. Google Hangouts sometimes will work for you. That's Google Hangouts. All right, so a couple more pieces to get to before we wrap the show for another day on this sunny. It's been like we're under attack. There's something going on in the sun right now, and it's been so bright and so cloudless for the last several days, which is very unusual for us. But here's some more shit you got to know before we get out of here. I mean, I'd love to let you go. I would, but let's remember. Got some more things to say. Support for marijuana legalization surges to record high. Now, this is in San Francisco Gate blog, SF Gate blog, but it's a Fox News poll, so settle down. That's incredible, though. Fox News, generally known for a much older demographic, and they say, a recent poll by Fox says that 59% of registered voters support legalizing cannabis for adult use. Now, when I was going to school, they used to call that the majority. Not one of these 51% for him and 49% for her in the federal elections. And by that, that's not just Trump, Hillary, but anywhere. These meager amounts. But here you have 59%, a democratic desire, if you will, still being suppressed. A record high of a percentage since the poll first asked the question in 2013, when only 46% of voters. So we've gone from 46% up to 60%, and they're still acting like they need to have to control it. This is a massive shift in opinion over a very short period. As more states legalize marijuana without the negative consequences opponents have warned about. Are you listening, Bill Blair? You architect of this garbage festival that we're fighting to drag ourselves through. Negative consequences that we're warned about. And they're not coming up, buddy. Get your shit together. Everybody's trying to understand this shit. Support will likely continue to increase, says Democratic pollster Chris Anderson, co-conductor of the Fox News poll. Wow, I didn't know they hired Democrats down there. 2/3 of Democrats and independent voters are in favor, while Republicans are split with 46% in support and opposition to legal pot. And if that's the case, and you're one of those Bible-thumping Republicans, then by all means crack open the Bible to Genesis, page 1 probably. Genesis chapter 1, verses 11, 12. Have a good read of that. This is all when God created this earth. One of the 11th and 12th thing he did was made sure we have these seeds that reproduce after themselves, this food, this vitamin, this need. We're all cannabis deprived. Several different generations support legalization, including baby boomers at 52%, Gen Xers at 60%, and the millennials at 72%. I don't know why we go into different countries and bomb the shit out of them to make them swallow democracy when that's not really what they're doing, when we don't really have democracy like that going on back home. But at least in Colorado, they're coming up with, and they're a little ahead of the curve. I get it. 2012, I think it was. They're saying that they could be freeing inmates with nonviolent pot convictions. Now, I don't think we've got that going on in Canada. I don't think they're trying to do that at all. That would make sense. All of these things that work so well and they seem to be effective and have been getting positive results, from impairment levels to decriminalization levels. So that's on KKTV 11, probably a Fox affiliate. Colorado Governor John Hickenlooper is exploring the idea of granting clemency to nearly 40 inmates convicted of nonviolent marijuana offenses. The Democrat tells Denver Post that it might be a good idea to invite the inmates to apply for clemency for nonviolent pot crimes. We need this suggestion to go around the world. A lot of people are in jail or are heading to jail. I think of Jenny Hallam in Australia, who will be going to court about this time next year. Again, they just added more charges. It's ridiculous. It's just, I can't even believe I'm sitting here talking about this obvious thing. It's like I'm sitting here going, hey, you know what? Round things can roll, and flat, straight things can't. We'll be back next week with the same message. I figured everybody would know this by now. But no, we are here to push this boulder up a hill until folks realize. So it's not really fair, and it's not reasonable that just about everywhere you go, the will of the majority is being ignored and obliterated by these people who are doing things like involving drugstores and pharmacopoeia now into cannabis distribution when they fought against it. Cops who busted people for it now profiting from it by investing into or perhaps proffering companies that sell it. They've assumed control that way, but it's still very, very negative. I got to this last week on a touch, but listen, the United Nations just warned member states to keep recreational cannabis illegal. This came out this year. According to a UN report, legal recreational cannabis violates decades-old international drug control treaties and is dangerous for international relations. Yeah, because when people think and people understand and people open up avenues in their brain and they start to contemplate more and they start to realize the bullshit game, these verbal ties that are then spat out onto paper and wrapped around us like chains, the more of us that realize this. This is why cannabis has been illegal for such a long time, if not the reason, one of the main reasons. But honestly, are you really that upset about violating a decades-old drug control treaty? Because, I mean, you know, the Americans have violated all kinds of treaties. Ask a Native American. Can't have a problem with that. It's time to go. These old men drew this thing up 50, 60 years ago. The United Nations International Narcotics Control Board, INCB, which monitors and supports global governmental compliance with international drug control treaties, has recently issued its 2017 annual report, and it contains stern warnings to its member states to keep the herb illegal. Well, I hope we're heading for a full bloody anarchy with this. And these old coots have been dreaming this thing up. These law fetishists, these punitive folks worried about us learning about what they're getting up to. Heavier now on the conspiracy half of the show as we wrap things up. This board is made of individuals rather than United Nations member states. What? Which helps to protect it from experiencing political pressure. Too bad. Experience the pressure. I hope it feels like a rock crushing you, like the Roadrunner Coyote tipping off the top of the hill. In fact, let's power it with one of those teeter-totter things he did first. The slingshot or the catapult. Shoot that rock up into the sky and feel that discomfort. We don't care about these appointed dudes. Containing stern warnings. Canada, if you legalize that substance, we will... we'll spell your name with a K. What are you going to do? Individuals rather than United Nations member states. However, the requirement that members of the board must include individuals with medical, pharmacological, or pharmaceutical experience was the result of lobbying by the pharmaceutical industry. I really hope I don't get one more notice, one more argument, one more thing from some person who says, oh, you're a conspiracy freak. The chemical companies wouldn't do that. Pharmaceutical companies wouldn't do that. They have created, with unappointed people not representing countries but corporations, reasons why. It doesn't talk about the benefits of the fact that medical cannabis is one thing, and And recreational cannabis, if used enough, is medical cannabis. Because you'll be ingesting enough of it to not leave yourself deprived of those endocannabinoids. Big Pharma against legalization for capitalistic reasons until they can find a way to control it like they're trying to do in Canada now, it looks like. According to decades-old international drug control treaties signed by most member states of people that wrote it that weren't from those states, remember, from the pharmaceutical thing, they are supposed to prohibit the non-medical use of cannabis. However, countries like Uruguay have ended prohibition regardless, and to that I say, congratulations to Uruguay, or if it's Uruguay, or however you like to say it, it's a lot more intelligent and on board than sucking up to some ridiculous treaty that no longer applies. Hey, you guys aren't being fair. We're going to lose billions of dollars. Well, you'll figure out how to get it going on. They've already been doing that, as we found out. With the police chiefs, etc. So we are going to, let's wrap this thing up. It's been episode 105 and 33, and we will be coming back next week with another show. We have another guest. We are going to continue to broach the boundaries of cannabis use, that most people want it, that a bunch of old fogies decades ago said us future folks couldn't have it. Where did they get off? Hopefully a lot of them aren't around anymore. I think that's what we might be waiting for, some kind of great die-off of the old guard. We lost a Rockefeller recently. I won't say that didn't feel good. Certainly something to pay more attention to as we get closer and closer to Justin Trudeau changing once again his timeline for allegedly legalizing this wonderful substance that they're choosing to treat like something terrible while they say they've done all the research and at the same time turn around and tell us we don't have enough research. We don't know. We're not really too sure about this. Well, I'm pretty sure they don't have any sensible representation anymore in my mind, and that is a promise. See you next week. Thanks for listening. This has been Green Crush, and we will fade on out with that kind of information. Okay, bye-bye.